Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Two California Filipinos, where we talk about pretty much everything and anything that we want to. And we are on week 6 of this. That's actually pretty insane that we've managed to set a long time. It's also done pretty well. We got a couple of comments too on the Batman one, so thank you all for responding and watching. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we love to read your comments as always. I think I've mentioned this before, but if you ever agree or disagree, love to have conversations in the chat too. Like I would totally be down for that, folks. I don't have the experience that some of you might, but I'm open to the conversation.
As always, though, we do have a pretty awesome episode today and a couple of episodes too. We talked last week about how we were planning on watching X-Men 97. The hit animated show that has swept not only across the nation, but across the world as one of Disney Plus's more popular and critically acclaimed television shows and productions, just overall in general, which is pretty awesome to see. So stockholders are, I think, pretty happy with this, as well as our audiences. And we talked about a lot of this stuff in here, didn't we?
Yeah, we covered the first 3 episodes, and I don't think we complained about one thing. I don't remember complaining about one thing, but also I'm trying to think back, and it's like, what did I not like, And honestly, there's not much. So spoiler alert, I don't think we talked about anything, but it's so well done, and we talk about so much in this episode.
We do. We talk about the plot, not only that, but what we loved about the animation and the theme song, of course, and all of the amazing characters in here. After all, it is X-Men, not the Logan show, not the Scott Summers show, not the Magneto show, but it is an X-Men show. So I hope that you guys will enjoy our very long conversation on Marvel's Merry Mutants. This is going to be part 1 of a 3-part series, and we hope to see you there for this one and the rest. All right, we have, I think, a good bit of a deal to talk about, just because this is my favorite Marvel thing, maybe ever since Endgame. It's actually insane. I can't believe I'm talking about something in this high praise of a character with sort of the inconsistency Marvel's had in the last 6 years. But this is it. If I had something to reach, this was it.
Yeah, they really hit it out of the park with this one. I hadn't watched this before our podcast. I'm watching it and I wanted to, I just hadn't gotten to it. And this finally gave me a reason to force myself to sit down and watch it. And this has been, we're doing the first 3 episodes today. That's the only bit I've watched so far. And it was so fun, fantastic. I am very excited to watch the rest of it and, talk about it next week too.
Exactly. No, me as well. And if I may ask, what X-Men have you watched before, read before, etc.? I know that everyone has very different experiences with the X-Men. I've talked to a lot of people who like the X-Men, and all of the experiences have varied. No pun intended.
Yeah. So my experience, as you would put it, is very limited. I haven't, like I've mentioned before, I haven't read a lot of comics, which is totally fine, but I've seen the movies. I like X-Men, X2, whatever they were called. I remember the X3, the one which is the butchering of the Juggernaut, by the way. But I did like X-Men First Class and X-Men Days of a Future Past. I know a lot of people say that Days of a Future Past is better, but I personally prefer X-Men First Class to Days of a Future Past. But that's my personal preference. Outside of that, the only real exposure to X-Men that I've had, I guess I don't know if you would count the Wolverine movies. I've seen all the X-Men movies, all the live action films I've seen. But the only other experience is way back when I was a kid. And this is before the year 2000. We had a VHS or what do they call it? VCR. We had a VCR, and I had a VHS little cassette thing that had 2 episodes of the X-Men animated series on it. And I would watch those 2 episodes over and over and over again. I don't remember major plot point. I remember the Sentinels were in one of them. But I don't remember much else besides that. Other than that, the extent of my X-Men knowledge is going to be through um, Reddit, the R who would win, R ask science fiction stuff. I do think Magneto, a lot of stuff that I've seen from Magneto, I think is like, pretty based. But I know he's problematic because he also tries to like genocide people. Okay, I'll rewind that. All right. Okay, so if he wasn't genocidal sometimes, I would say I think that he's right in a lot of cases.
It's not an unpopular opinion. I think the more that you engage with X lore, like for example, I like a lot of people revere Professor X. Like if you just watch the movies, right, and no like previous experience, like oh he's a decent person, he believes in coexistence between this and that. The more you like delve into his character, when like especially with this show, and the portrayal of Magneto, and then like when you read the comics, it's more so people talk about the dream that Xavier has than the character, because his character kind of sucks. I think there's like a small joke where it's like he's responsible for the deaths of lots of innocent children, both mutant and human. But
damn,
no, like I get your thing on there though. Like I mean my experience with the X-Men has been a lot bigger, even though I haven't been an X-Men fan for as long as some other people. Like for example, I got into X-Men with this book, also written by Hickman. It's called House of X, Powers of 10, which sort of redefines the entire. It's amazing. Like redefines the entire X-Men. They got their own island now. I actually did a speech on it in Coach Sid's class. I'll put that video. It's good that I've been telling people watch that video, but it's not uploaded. I gotta make it on my channel. But like, I love.
Oh, was it asynchronous?
No. I was Coach Sid let someone record me during the speeches.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
okay.
So I uploaded. So 2 of the speeches are on my channel. I did one on Dick Grayson, and then I did another one on Spidey. Both of those are up on the channel. I haven't gotten to put the X-Men video up, so I will do that at some point. But I mean, I love the X-Men. I love what they sort of stand for, as pretty much since 1975, where it's this whole ordeal with civil rights and co-joining between just letting the minorities walk and do their thing instead of being persecuted and hunted down. So I mean it's a fantastic scene. There's a lot of amazing characters. It's why I love them so much.
Yeah, the first 3 episodes I was really enjoying it. I do like the X-Men. I love the sort of like almost parallels between Magneto and Professor X, and then Malcolm X and MLK respectively. I don't know how familiar folks watching this are going to be with like the civil rights movement, but obviously MLK is revered today because he largely preached like nonviolence, peace, and stuff like that. Not that Professor X necessarily preaches that, but it was the more like, you know what I mean? The more like tasteful view versus the radical extreme view of Magneto, who I think would sometimes people could like parallel with like the violence of something that I don't know, Malcolm X at some points advocated for. Not that Malcolm X ever advocated for something like genocide or something like that, but I think it's really interesting. There's a lot of historical parallels, and I remember when this first came out, I remember seeing comments on Reddit about people complaining about like wokeness or something in X-Men, and I was like, isn't that what the X-Men are kind of about?
That's the whole point of the team. I remember talking about this on my weekly comic book show, like preview show or whatever that I usually do, and we both like my pod co-host and I came up with the point, like that's what they've stood for, like since they were created. I don't think Stan Lee had sort of the fortitude to say on it. He even said like a couple of years ago, right before he passed away, that if he were a little smarter, he probably could have made that parallel. But it's all the folks after, from 1975 on, when they just sort of dominated the scene as one of if not the most famous superhero team that existed on the planet. And the whole point of it is you get to see through like literally every single character they've created. The only thing they want to do is just live in a world without being hunted down, without being ridiculed, and without being judged by their viewpoints. That's all they want. It's funny too, because literally after I think the first 2 episodes aired, like the folks who were making those complaints stopped talking because they realized the show was good. People were loving the show, and people were also watching the show in droves, and they went away, which is awesome, because we don't need that type of toxicity on the internet. But man, like I can't believe, yeah, you've like some people just like hit a wall with this. Like it's not hard to read. You shouldn't you shouldn't be able to draw those conclusions based on they were trying to do parallels with this, or like one character's non-binary. Like, who cares, man?
yeah, seriously. Like it doesn't change. I don't know. Like people complain about stuff like that, and like with one of the characters being non-binary, like Morph, for it makes perfect sense. Like it makes perfect sense for someone like Morph, or I don't know if Mystique's in it at all, but like for someone like a Mystique or something, to be like
people
non-binary.
People have drawn up Mystique to be trans just because of the way that she shapeshifts and alters between, and it makes sense to me. They did a retcon with something about that a couple of years ago. She also got married to her longtime partner Destiny, who's a woman. They tied the knot earlier this year. So it's stuff like that where it's again, like they've always been like this at Marvel. They've never had a year off since 1975 where it hasn't been, this isn't what this is what they've stood for. Like to the point, like they got their own nation 5 years ago in the comics, and they consistently draw up parallels about this. Like it's not hard to read. It also shouldn't be that hard to comprehend what's going on here either. Like I don't get it.
I'm gonna go ahead and say that the folks complaining about wokeness in X-Men are probably not very media literate. These are probably the same people that complain about wokeness for like Rage Against the Machine or System of a Down or something like that, dude. It's like, what? And so, like there's some stuff that we could unpack there later on in a different episode, but I liked, again, this is my first time watching the series, and it was very much like, oh yeah, like this is very clearly staying true to what I thought the X-Men is supposed to be about, and then also putting new spins on some things. I did some quick research, and Morph wasn't originally non-binary in the original show, so it's like you know what I mean? It shows like the kind of the evolution of it, and I think that's really smart. And something that you mentioned earlier is that the people in X-Men, or the mutants specifically, they just want to live, right? And some of them want to live, some of them don't want anything to do with their powers. Like the new guy that they showcased, the guy who's getting kidnapped in the first episode.
Hey, Roberto da Costa Sunspot, who was in the Avengers comics you've been reading.
Oh, that's what. Okay, because he kind of showed his power, and I was like, what is that? I have no idea what it is. Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, so I thought it was really interesting showing that, like obviously everyone knows Professor X, Magneto, vastly different ideas of how to achieve their goal, which is just a world in which mutants can live in. And sure, Professor X is more like, I want to live with the humans, we don't harm, blah blah blah. Magneto's like, I'm gonna, if they're in our way, I'm gonna kill them, kind of deal. And so I totally get that, like they agree on that thing, and they have disagreements on how to achieve that goal, which is very realistic, and you can see that in a lot of movements today, whether it's whether it's like the civil rights movement back in the 60s, whether it's the modern like BLM movement, because like you have these ideas of people like, hey, we just want to be here, and then different sort of like leaderships will like fracture into like different ideas, and unfortunately kind of consume each other, or they'll be fighting each other instead of focusing on actually doing, like, achieving the goal at hand. And then the reason I bring up Roberto is because it's really cool that, yeah, it makes sense that some people are just like, look, dude, I don't want to get involved in this, man. I just want to go to the club, have a good time, watch some movie. You know what I mean? And I was like, you know what, that makes sense. Like, not everyone's gonna be a Scott what's
Scott
Cyclops
Summers.
yeah, not everyone's going to be a Scott Summers or a Jean Grey and be all about the movement, be all about that life, because it's an exhausting one, man. Like that's not I mean, yeah, we
Like
read the comics.
you're not entitled to sign up for it.
Exactly. Like you're not entitled to it. You don't have to do it. But also like there's a lot of different, like there's just it's really cool.
It's a nice cavalcade of different themes and elements going on in the series.
Yeah, I think the characters are very well done. You know, it's not just, oh, we're gonna go fight the bad guys. It's oh, what are Roberto's motivations? What are Magneto's motivations? Like obviously he's trying to be better, a different person here. So yeah, I mean, God, okay. I don't want to get too deep into it. I know we're still gonna do like a plot summary and stuff, but I really appreciate that.
No, for sure. And I mean, we get to see this. I love the way that you brought up the whole thing about evolving, right? Because that sort of is the whole thing about mutants, right? Being the next step in human evolution, which is why they have the X genome, and which is why they're different. You get to see that like all portrayed out in 3 different episodes, and that's pretty. Again, it's the whole thing about the X-Men and why I keep going back to them, and why a lot of people, keep reading and watching X-Men. And I also like that we have, like, for the entire series, or for the episodes that we watched anyways, right? We have 3 sort of standalone episodes that build upon each other, where it's more episodic, but you get, because I think one problem nowadays with TV shows is that they're made to binge instead of I can go sit down, watch an episode and enjoy it, because you can totally like sit down, watch an episode of something and just enjoy it for what it is. And I really appreciate that it has a lot of like nostalgic bits too, because they did sort of a similar thing with the original X-Men series. So that's something I'm really happy that they had along with it for this.
Yeah, they did that part very well. You can pick up an episode pretty much anywhere and like understand what's going on because of what the characters say, what they're doing, stuff like that. But you could also watch it from the beginning. If you watch it from the beginning, obviously it's going to be a more complete, holistic sort of plot. But I do like that. Yeah, there's different plot. You know what I mean? And I forget what episode that Jean Grey has her baby, and then that's like a major plot point in the 3rd episode, right? Like, but at the end of every episode, you do feel a sense of like completeness, even if it leaves off on a cliffhanger, like Magneto showing up, or like I don't know, Jean Grey showing up, So I don't know. I do like how they have, at least the first 3 episodes, how they're written and linked together. I think that's well done.
Me too. I also appreciated that they put in the OG theme song from the 90s.
Dude.
I'm so you know what? I don't even know why they have a skip intro part, because I'm like, I'm not skipping that. Are you kidding me?
I watched the first one. Okay, so I'll get to. Okay, this is a quick. I wanted to find it because I just remembered I had it. But when I was in college, I was in a media production class, or I forget what it was called, but I think it was just media production. And they just got these new like MacBook computers, really nice, all the full Adobe software and all this stuff, really nice hardware and really good software. And one of our first assignments was to create an intro for a podcast that was going to be like a 90s rewind, like a nostalgic of the 90s sort of podcast. And because Paul and I, Coach Paul, were grad students, we were like, oh yeah, we'll just do it, because we couldn't actually attend the class because it was at a different time for us. It was during like speech and debate practice or something. But we always did our work like just after class, and the professor was totally fine with it because he's really cool. And the one I took the theme song of X-Men. I ripped an MP3 of it, and then I think it started with Super Smash, the original like Super Smash Brothers like sort of theme, and then like after like the guy's done going Super Smash Brothers, and then like Melee or whatever he says, the starts, and it was just like a mash of just like a bunch of I guess some people would consider like nerdy 90s theme stuff. But man, I was like, oh, this is sick. I'll try to find it. If I can find it before our next episode, I'll send it over to you.
Heck yeah. No, it might be my favorite like theme song and maybe all of superhero media. I love
it's iconic.
It is. Like, I love Danny Elfman's Batman, but that was also part of the Michael Keaton films. I mean, there's some others there, but man, I really miss the whole cartoon. Like, we got a cool intro going on where you're just like you're sitting down on a Saturday, you're enjoying, you know, your show, and then the first thing you see is that cartoon intro, and man, you're like, I want more. Like, I'm hyped up and revved up, and that theme does nothing but to hype me up for what I'm about to watch, just because it's so iconic and so epic too.
Yeah, it's aged so well. I remember one time my fiance, she said something like, "Oh, man, there weren't really a lot of good like theme songs in the '90s, or the '90s doesn't really have any good theme songs." And I was like, X-Men, the animated series? Like, what are you talking about?" And she was like, "Okay, I forgot about that one." But like, it's universally recognized as just phenomenal.
It's when I think of the X-Men, you know, when the MCU like rolls in with the X-Men, I don't want to hear any theme but an adaptation of the '90s theme.
Dude, if they do something else, man, I will be extremely disappointed. Like, they have to.
You know, this is someone who I like. X-Men Evolution. Like, there's been 3 or I guess 4 X-Men cartoons, but Evolution was my favorite. But even then, it doesn't stand up to the OG '90s theme. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's I don't know. I have no other words to say that, like, if you skip the intro, you are not an X-Men fan. Like, I'm sorry. And I want to know how many people are out there, but like, even if you have a shorter attention span or just want to get to, it's like, come on, man. It's a minute long. It lets you like groove and dance wherever you're watching, whether you're in a seat or you're in your living room. Like, absolutely insane.
Yeah, I totally, you know what's funny? I totally forgot about X-Men Evolution because I did watch that show. I do remember watching that show. I don't remember like major plot points, but I like that was you just like unlocked a memory for me. Like,
there
I remember
you go.
it. So
more memory unlocked. Let's go.
Yeah, I was like, oh, like I looked it up and I was like, oh, I remember this animation. I don't remember what their voices sound like. I don't remember a lot of that. Maybe I remember. I mean, I remember probably Wolverine because it's just like a "What's up, bub?" You know, like a.
I think that's like him in every single adaptation, though.
Yeah, it's a great voice. I mean, that's how I picture his voice. I don't picture, you know, that's how I hear it. I don't hear Hugh Jackman. I hear animated.
All right, go. We're gonna go out and try to kill some people.
Yeah. What if we cut him into pieces?
But yeah, I mean, again, like, you have the 3 episodes are sort of succinct all and throughout, and the first 3 are also we get to know where the X-Men have been after the aftermath of the original series. We're introduced to a world or an X-Men that don't have Professor X leading, so it is up to Scott Summers to lead this faction of people to figure out, like, what are we gonna do. We get introduced to reintroduced, I should say, to the Friends of Humanity and the Sentinels and the Master Mold fight, which is super cool. I felt like that's another thing too we can talk about later, the animation. And then we also get introduced to, like, Jean's getting a baby, which I have some words to say about that later, because they readapted a super famous X-Men event, Inferno. Where we find out, like, Jean Grey really isn't Jean Grey, and man, there we go.
Yeah, I was totally lost. I was like, what the heck is going on? So by the way, like, I was gonna ask you this. This is a good, you know, since we're kind of in the plot right now. At the end of, I didn't know this, but at the end of the original X-Men, it sounds like this is a straight continuation of it. So Professor X dies at the original X-Men.
Yeah,
series?
he's away. Like the whole last episode, it wasn't great. But he is gone. We do get like his voice and sort of like, yeah, thank you, X-Men, for whatever you've done. Blah blah blah. This is, and yeah, he's out.
Wow, I didn't know that. That is
the last season of X-Men, the original series, was not great at all.
Oh
yeah.
It happens.
It does. Because they were bought out by another company, I believe, and the animation style changed. Some of the creative teams changed, and then yeah.
Yeah, it sucks when, like, it really sucks when a really good animated series exists, and then for whatever, like for budget reasons or to cut costs or to increase profits, whatever you want to call it, they switch to like a cheaper animation. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like I'm not expecting like 60 frames per second. You know what I mean? But like I want it to look good. Like I don't want it to be noticeably bad. Where, oh man, there's a series on Netflix called Seven Deadly Sins, and it's not great plot wise. It's just something to watch if you're bored. I guess you can throw it on. It's kind of interesting at some points. The characters are, in my opinion, very boring. But God, season 2 of that show, the animation gets awful, dude. It is beyond. It's beyond bad. It's like comical. Like you're looking at it, and like if you pause like half of the frames, like, you know, pause at any moment in the show, like half of those frames are gonna look like, how did like why who's drawing this, who, you know what I mean? But so anyways, the animation of X-Men 97 is also appreciated because it's got that nostalgic, you know, late 90s early 2000s feel. I would say actually more 90s than like early 2000s, but it's got that feel. But it is modernized. There are points where I can tell, okay, yeah, this came out in 2024, not 1997. So
yeah, it's a big step. Like I love animation just for the simple fact that I think you get to do some things in animation expressionistic wise that you're not allowed to, that you can't do as regular human beings in live action, because we can only portray so many emotions at so many different times. Like I love the scenes where you have like some character and then their face like gets super puffed up and all it is like a flat stale emotion, but you can't, you know, you can't show those types of emotions necessarily in live action because we can't puff our heads up a billion times so that we can just see it. And I love animation for that, and for all of the hard people who do work on that stuff. I was able to tour Pixar last year because I have a friend who works there. And from what I've seen, they do not have necessarily easy jobs. Some of them are underpaid too, I'd argue. But it's a labor and a love. I think that not many people appreciate enough, just because it's like, oh, like cartoons are for kids, or cartoons are geared towards like not my demographic or age, when it's like, man, like this is something I think everyone can enjoy. And I really appreciate that they had a super distinct modern flair, like you mentioned, along with, man, if you were ripped out from 1992, you were put in 2024 to watch this show, you'd super enjoy it as well.
yeah, I think you bring up a good point about it's a cartoon, it's for kids, you know. I think like I'm glad that it seems we're kind of shifting away, not we, but like culturally kind of shifting away from that idea. There's a lot of different reasons. I think the sort of how mainstream anime is, even though like anime, I would say it's not, some of it's for kids, but a lot of it's for like teenage boys, young men, you know. But there are some like really good anime that hold up to this day, especially like Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And I think that like very like mature themes kind of help that come along. Also, you know, people who watch cartoons as a kid or more serious cartoons as a kid, they're grown up now and they understand the complexity that you can have in animation. And I'd also like to shout out the Spider-Man Spider-Verse series, because it's not, you know, it's not classic animation. It's definitely a more digital, modern animation, but it's animated nonetheless. And I think like that is another example of something that's just like, it's got like this interesting, it's got this unique art style that I think people appreciate. I know we're not talking about that right now, but man, I'm just like, man, like there's a lot of good animated stuff out there. And if people are like not wanting to watch something animated because it's for kids or something, then they're just,
yeah, my family has that whole, or my parents at least, and I know some other titos and titas that I know, just because it's like, oh, like it's not real people, so therefore it can't be for me, when it's like completely the opposite. I actually would argue that like some of the best TV shows like ever made, like animated anyways, like are some of the best, just because it caters not only like we can teach stuff to kids, but to all generations. Like, it's why I love Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's why I love like shows like that, because you get to learn not only about the characters but the world that they live in and the lessons that they learn, lessons that all of us as people can learn. Like, even in this show too, there are lessons that we can certainly learn from the characters, like with themes on trust. You have the whole thing with Scott, and like, is Gene his like what the heck does he even do now, because his wife is back, even though like she was gone, but like he was with another person that looks exactly like Gene and acts exactly like Gene,
Yeah.
or almost
whom he had a baby with,
right? Like, exactly. You get to learn about the themes of like hatred and what they can do to people, and how to effectively combat that with the Friends of Humanity and the entire United Nations meeting and trial with Magneto, and also just the stuff that you can learn from this series in general is why I think it stands out sort of from the rest of, not that we've gotten many animation projects from Marvel or DC TV wise in the last like 10 years comparatively to like what it felt like in the 1990s and 2000s, but I just love stuff like that where we as people can learn from series like this.
Yeah, I really appreciate the like kind of growth of Magneto too. I think that's I think that's really, really cool. Just seeing him in a different light. In the X movies, you know, he's played, I forget the name of the actor that he's played by.
Ian something.
Yeah, Ian McKellen?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And obviously a fantastic actor, but like very, I don't know, like, it's just the animated series, even like he's much younger, I guess, in the animated series than Ian McKellen. But like in the animated series, he looks like he's maybe 50s or something, you know, could be 60s. But yeah, it's just interesting. Like, you see like this very like, I don't know. I mean, let's be real. This Magneto, man, she's probably on some posters, you know what I'm saying? Like, you could do some modeling, but
that hair flows.
Yeah, I just love the evolution. Like, he shows up and he's like trying to be a better person, and obviously he loved Charles Xavier, and you know what I mean, like that's one of his best friends, even though they're like enemies and disagree and they fight and stuff like that, but
because they want the same thing at the end.
Exactly. And I really thought that was a cool like story driver, you know, that is working really well for me. I think it's really interesting too, because man, I'm gonna bring up Malcolm X again, but Malcolm X, because he joined the I forget what the organization is called. I think it's the Brotherhood of Islam, and the Brotherhood of Islam is very like problematic, you know, like they're not they just have some problematic ideals. But once I think it's the Nation of Islam. Yeah, that's what it is. The Nation of Islam. They have like some really problematic ideas, right? Some hateful stuff. And like Malcolm X did some reflecting, and he actually left the Nation of Islam because of it, and like changed his approach. He wasn't full like, oh, I'm all peaceful, I'm not going for this anymore. But like, he was just like, okay, I need to be better, right? And I think that, like, I don't know, when I was watching, I was like, oh, that's so sick, dude. It's Magneto and he's trying to be better. Oh, that's so sick. I love it. But yeah, I love Magneto's character arc so far. I do like Cyclops too in it. I think in the first episode, you see him use his punch vision or whatever it's called to like propel him. You know what I mean? When they're falling out of the airplane, the X-plane, whatever it's called, and he like uses that to like slow down his fall. I was like, oh, that's sick. I didn't know he could do that. That's so cool. There's a lot of good stuff, but yeah.
No, man. So Cyclops, for people who don't know, he is my favorite character. I think if you've been watching me for the last 4 years, like, you'd learn that, and I understand why people don't like him. He was definitely a dumb nut in the original animated series, so I would understand if like that's your first time interacting with him. Not a great look for his character, and I think even then, like in the 2000s movies, where he's pretty much just like, yeah, I do whatever Professor X says, you know, I get it. But what I love about him is that he's always stood different from Charles, in that like it's not necessarily like, yeah, he respects the dream, but he's got his own motivation and agenda to prop up too. One that seems more holistically justified than Charles is, and we get to see a little bit of that in the first 3 episodes. I can't wait to see how it evolves later on. But what I've always loved about Scott is just like, yeah, his own standing to be his own person, learning through everything. Like it got to a point too where like he became the super anti-establishment icon that the X-Men had for the last 16-20 years, which is insane to think about, because like he was once Xavier's most trusted pupil, because he was led to lead the original X-Men, and of course led the X-Men through up until like the late 80s and early 90s and all that. Yeah, it's crazy too, because like, yeah, I remember I saw on Twitter there were some people saying like Cyclops would be totally Blue Lives Matter, and then when you actually learn about the character, he's like the complete opposite of that. Yeah, so
that's crazy. I mean, I don't know. To me, that's a wild claim. You know, like not that I know a lot about X-Men, but to think that like the X-Men who are persecuted, like throughout that's their whole point of they're just persecuted for being them, that they would be backers of the state that is persecuting them. That makes zero sense. Like I don't know. Like obviously I'm sure there are some mutants that work for the government and are, like villains or whatever. I'm sure some of them exist, but like if one of them was Cyclops, that wouldn't really even make sense to me. But I didn't know that about Cyclops. I didn't know he was like, I don't know, anti-establishment.
Oh yeah, he was one of the first X-Men. I like recently they had like this big like tournament, and he was just like, yeah, I can't he can't like continue to do whatever it is they were doing, so he like pretty much gave up his position and left. That's why I love Cyclops though. It's like he's always stood his ground. I understand it, like there's sort of a bit of infidelity with him, and he can be a bit of a goofball and a doofus sometimes, but he's really well portrayed in this show. Like honestly, I think if anyone was just like, I don't know if I really like Cyclops, and they hadn't read much X-Men or seen much X-Men besides the original show or maybe like some of the 2000s movies, I would give them this, say like, this is what Cyclops is and what he stands for. I think you should watch it.
That's really cool. I think maybe he gets a hard time too, because I think everyone's favorite character from the X-Men, not everyone, but one of the most popular is Wolverine, right? Mm-hmm. And Wolverine is generally, to my knowledge, not like the leader of the X-Men, and so he butts heads with Cyclops. So I think, not that like people are like, oh, why won't Cyclops just do the thing Wolverine wants to do, or whatever, but like I do think there might be some subconscious sort of like oh god, Cyclops sucks, why can't Wolverine be the leader? Right. Like that, not that people are like really vocal about that, I don't know if they are, but I think there could be like that attitude towards it.
Oh no, that's 100% there. Like,
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Like people have been like that for since like the early 90s, just like, because Wolverine was the cool one doing all the cut-ups. He's got the claws, he can smash in some heads, and he's like, oh, he's the hot, like short, scrawny, like old gruff guy that you want to see and root for and succeed. But me, like as someone who grew up, in 2010s, 2020s, I never got that experience. So Wolverine, by that like viewpoint, isn't my favorite character. Another cool thing with Cyclops, he had a panel in an Uncanny X-Men run back 13-14 years ago, where he was just like, I have plans for my plans for my plans, so just in case, like if the enemy like wanted to figure out something, they can't reach me or touch me, which is like super cool, because like that's usually attributed to Batman, right, where he has like all these contingency plans, but it's like, no, Cyclops has it down to a T. So that's another reason. He's like a master strategist. Again, we can see that like early on, the first episode where he's getting beat up, Friends of Humanity is like, hey, surrender. Yeah, I surrender. Puts off the visor, shoots out. I'm like, yo, this is so cool.
Dude, I didn't know that he was like a master strategist. I never think so as someone who is not well read in comics, I never thought of Cyclops like that. I always thought of him as, oh, it's the guy that shoots beams out of his eyes. And so that's why, like, even in the first episode when he's fighting and is using his beam vision or whatever the hell it's called to like propel him through the like almost like a jetpack kind of deal, you know what I mean? I was like, dude, that is sick. Like, that is cool. Maybe I don't know if they ever show that in the movies, like the live action movies, but like they could make him like 10 times cooler,
right?
If they did that. And then also like the master strategist thing, dude. See, I didn't know any of that. Right. That'd be sick.
Yeah, like a lot of people just look at it either like through like he has optic blasts, but they don't do much, right? Because like, I mean, that's the thing with his sort of mutant ability, right? It's like it kind of sucks compared to the rest. Like, you got Jean Grey, right? She's got telekinesis, she's got telepathy, she can move things like everywhere. And you look at Cyclops, you're like, that's all you can do.
Yeah.
And like you realize like, oh, like under the skin, he's a much more interesting character. So like, that's someone I can root for. I get why people can't, but for me, that's why I love him.
Yeah, I mean, man, I just see there are a lot of things that I was watching this show and I was like, what? Like, I didn't know that Rogue could fly.
Mm-hmm.
I totally I don't remember that from those 2 episodes I used to watch all the time. And then I had to look it up and I was like, oh yeah, she's got flying super strength. I just had no idea. Like, I just did not know. I thought her thing was just, you know.
And she can steal any single person's abilities, mold it into her own and use it. Like, which is super cool. That's why I also love Rogue too.
Yeah, she's like giga powerful, dude. But man, there was so favorite moments I get. Let's
your favorite moments.
God, there were some goosebump moments. I think it's in the second episode when they're fighting the Sentinels, and Scott says something to Storm, and then the Sentinels are like detecting Omega level threat or something.
Yeah.
What does he say to her?
It's like not a storm's coming, but like gather in something, like, which was a super cool one-liner. And
it was sick, dude. That was like, I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, that's a goosebumps moment. You know what I mean? Like, that was so cool. Was that the first episode or the second?
Second.
Okay.
No, that was the first episode. That was the first episode.
Was it? Okay. Yeah, there was just so much good. Like that was sick. I loved Magneto's speech in the second episode.
I was like, yo, I was like walking around the living room when he just started talking.
Dude, it was so good. When he sees Storm, when he shows up, I think he shows up at the end of the first episode, or I don't remember if this dialogue, because the second episode continues straight from the first. And I don't remember if this dialogue continues, but he's just like, Storm, you're the closest thing to a goddess we'll ever see. And then later on in that episode, she loses her powers. And I was like, oh, dude, like, and then like, it just, because like things like that, it sets up, like it shows the audience, to someone who doesn't read the comics or something like that, not as well versed as like me, it shows someone like that exactly how highly Magneto, like one of the most famous mutants of all of like time, you know what I mean, one of the most famous comic book characters of all time, how he thinks of Storm. And not that Storm's like not as famous, I mean, she's probably not as popular as like a Magneto or something, but she's up there. But like, to say like, I don't know, you're the closest thing to a goddess, and then like later on she loses her power, and just like the hatred, because you could tell, man, he wants to just like kill everyone in there, and then he does it, and I was like, man, this is sick. I am digging it so far, man, like just loving it. And then there's a moment in the first episode where Gambit charges up Wolverine's claws, and then he jumps through like the Sentinel's like neck or something. I was like, oh, this is so sick, dude.
It is.
Yeah.
My thing, so completely unrelated, but we so at the comic shop I worked at, we had like really cool Sentinel toys that were like $35 or $40. I don't, but they look super cool. And a person,
are they big?
Yeah, they're super. Yeah, they were really big. And a person asked me like, hey, are you like, you're an X-Men fan, like, are you gonna ever like buy these, from your shop? And I'm like, I can't on principle, because I feel like I would be persecuting myself if I bought a Sentinel toy. But it looks super cool. But no, I love just that whole entire first fight with the Master Mold and the Sentinels in that first episode. I don't think you could have drawn it up any better. Like a whole showcase of powers too. Like if you are a fan of any of these characters, you're not going to be disappointed with any of the fight scenes.
No, man, it was so great. You get to see all of them doing their thing, you know, which is really cool. And I think one of the reasons why the Storm moment from that first episode gives me goosebumps is because you really get to see how powerful Storm is. Like even compared to the other X-Men. I'm sure like Jean Grey is stronger technically, especially if she has like the Phoenix Force or whatever, and of course she is, right, with the Phoenix Force, but like just to see the like what is classified as like an Omega level mutant. And that's like a fraction of what Storm could do. I remember my fiance, because okay, so my fiance's father figure is like super into comics, and I've told you about him, man. I need to get a video or a picture or something. I need to send him to you of like his comic book room, dude. Like he has, and it's mostly Marvel stuff to my knowledge, but just all this stuff. And so my partner, she's been into comics for a while. And I remember early on in our relationship, she was trying to explain to me how powerful Storm is. And I was like, what? Like, really? Like, you know what I mean? Like if she were to go to a planet like Jupiter, she could,
dude, it'd be over for everyone.
Yeah. It's like she could just, because from my knowledge, she like obviously she controls the weather, but it's beyond that. Like she controls like the atoms in the atmosphere basically. And she can like heat them up and cool them down to create lightning or blizzards and stuff like that. And if she could do that, especially on and she can on a grand scale, it's like, just getting to see that, because when you're in a show like X-Men the animated series or X-Men 97, or when you're in a movie like in the live action ones, it's very difficult to show the scale of what some of these characters can do. And I just think that like seeing how you had a team of like 5 of the X-Men struggling with some Sentinels, and then Storm comes in and literally wipes them away. Like that is the difference of like a Storm versus a Wolverine, you know, the difference of a Jean Grey and, you know, a Beast or a Cyclops. And I was like, dude, this is like just like to show that scale. I thought that was so cool.
I will also add, I think the most powerful characters for the X-Men are the women. They're not the men, which is, I think, pretty interesting that they had, I guess, foresight of something to say. Like Chris Claremont, who wrote the X-Men, is pretty much responsible for what the X-Men are today. He wrote them for 16 years. I think there's a reason to why he pivoted towards a lot more of the women and showcasing their strengths instead of the men. So that's an observation I think some people should I don't know, put their heads in.
You know, that's pretty cool. Like, I mean, yeah, like obviously Jean Grey and Storm and there's some other like very powerful X-Men, or very powerful mutants rather. And yeah, it's really cool. I mean, God, Storm is so cool. Like in this, obviously it sucks that she loses her power. I'm interested to see where they take it, because at the end of the 3rd episode, they kind of left off on like this plot, not cliffhanger, but like you see that she is doing something, right? And I'm excited to see where she goes, because she's like, I don't know, I was never really interested in Storm as a kid. Maybe it's because I was just a little boy, you know. But like after watching this, I'm like, man, dude, like just seeing like, again, it goes to like how powerful she is, the respect that like Magneto has for her, the complexity of the characters, her relationship with Jean Grey, like, you know, I think all that stuff's really cool. But it also lends itself to like just the showrunners doing a fantastic job with the plot and the characters. God, it's so good, dude. I didn't expect it to be this good. I
didn't either. And I also did not expect Wolverine to not be in this show as much, because I think like for a lot of people, they're, you know, your regular X-Men person character, Wolverine is arguably the most famous of all of these characters, just because he's been prevalent and been so much media. Maybe not as much now comparatively, but you know what? I think that's a good service to the show, because the Wolverine that you do get in doses is well written and well cased, but he also isn't over permeating the show with his presence, which is exactly like what, again, like I'm saying this as like, I get it, I'm not the biggest Wolverine guy out there, but like less is more in this case, and I think that they did that part well too.
I 100% agree. I especially in the 2000 teens, I was very Wolverine fatigued, right? He was always a main character in the live action films, and not like, oh, he's one of the main X-Men. Like it was just like, oh, it's the Wolverine show, you know? And then he got his own, I mean, that's how I felt at least. But then he got his own movies, and I think that's one of the reasons why X-Men First Class is one of my favorites, because I think he has that small cameo.
Yep.
You know,
that's it.
Yeah, but like exactly, and it's perfect for Wolverine, man. But man, like I am very happy with the sort of like screen time that different characters get. Like I say we, like I'm like been waiting for this or something like that. I'm not like, I'm not sitting in your chair, right? I'm totally different, and I think that's what makes this conversation great. But we collectively have seen enough Wolverine. Let us see the other X-Men, the other mutants, because I mean, obviously Hugh Jackman has the star power that the live action movies get, and so I'm still looking forward to Deadpool Wolverine. Like I'm gonna go see that movie, right? But like, man, I hope that like X-Men 97 can spark some interest for the Hollywood types to be like, oh, like let's make an X-Men movie that really focuses on like the team aspect and not so much individual plots that happen to be on a team kind of deal. Like, I don't know. I watched, like, I understand the need to like focus on what individual characters are doing and their motivations, but it does feel like those come before the team aspect, and I feel like there should be more balance between it. And maybe that's why I feel, and you and I both feel this way, that like maybe there's just too much Wolverine in those other films, because he just like they probably filmed 4 hours worth of video and then they have to cut it down to 2 hours and 20 minutes or whatever, and they probably keep all of Hugh Jackman's scenes. So
no, I mean I completely agree with you. That was my biggest problem with Days of Future Past, is like, that's, in the comics, that's a Kitty Pryde arc. That's not Wolverine. Like Wolverine.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, that's Kitty Pryde's story. Like, you get to see the world sort of through her lens, but it doesn't focus as much on that. More so like, oh, we got Wolverine, we got to throw him in. And again, there's nothing wrong, like, holistic. Well, there's a lot of things wrong with his character, but I'm not gonna get to that. It's more just so, like, I watch X-Men because it's called the X-Men. It's funny too, though, because like Jonathan Hickman, the guy that we both covered a couple weeks ago, had this to say about the X-Men and sort of like how people read or watch X-Men, is that yes, it is about the X-Men, but they will typically have their favorite character on one specific team, right? Whether you're reading a regular X-Men book or maybe it's one of like the X-Men team spinoffs or something, and it becomes holistically about that character, because you want to see like, oh, like I'm reading this book because it's whatever, but like I'm only following it for Nightcrawler, only following it for Kitty Pryde, only following it for Rogue, right? When in opposite, in retrospect, it should be, you should be reading it because it's called X-Men. It's plural. It's not just one singular character on this team, as much as I think some people would like to make it out to be. But then it's a completely different thing than X-Men. No, I love stuff like this because you get to see and how it rolls, like with teams and the different dynamics that you get to see in this series so far, like how Beast rolls along with everyone and what his dynamics are with the team. And I appreciated that they leaned into that more, instead of like, oh, we love this character, we're just gonna try to highlight them through it. And it can show too. Like, you can obviously tell what writers' favorite characters are, not only in superhero shows, but like in a lot of shows in general. And I appreciate that there was less bias here that there have been in previous X-Men adaptations.
Yeah, it's, God, the balance is so good, man. It's cool. There's a lot of stuff I didn't know. I was looking up stuff, just like characters and their powers, because I was so confused of like I said earlier, I was like, I didn't know that Rogue could fly. So like, I didn't know that Days of a Future Past was a Kitty Pryde story and not a Wolverine story. Not that I would know, but you know what I mean? Like, I would never know that stuff. But man, like, it's stuff like that, man. It's stuff like that where I'm like, damn, I wish they would have, they could have stuck to it. And, I'm not saying don't have like Wolverine in it. I'm just saying, like, let someone else get the star in the show for a little bit. But I think, unfortunately, the Hollywood types, especially the Hollywood types, are going to be like, well, what's going to sell the most tickets? Oh, Hugh Jackman is. But luckily in something like X-Men 97, it's like you're already subscribed to Disney Plus. Like that's not, you know what I mean? Like they know, like, I mean, I'm sure they have like the metrics and stuff of how many people have watched it. But I think I'm hoping that something like X-Men 97 and the praise that this show has gotten, I mean, I've only seen the first 3 episodes, but I know that it's been critically well received, and audiences have also received it very well. Like it's gotten for audiences like average people like us, and then also critics. So I'm hoping that Disney takes some notes and be like, oh, we should produce more content like this, or give projects to maybe the folks that were in charge of making something like 97. And it gets same thing for Star Wars, man. Like my favorite thing, I don't know if you've seen Andor for Star Wars, but Andor is like, to me, it's like the favorite of like the Disney media Star Wars. And X-Men 97 is for me, the very clear favorite. It's just, I mean, like I like the live action stuff, but 97 is just, you just get, like I said, you get to see like real, like the fight scenes are just way different. And I just hope that it kind of steers them in that direction. Even if it maybe costs a little bit more to hire quality writers and people with, better stories, better ideas and stuff like that, it's obviously worth it, man. Like people are gonna be watching X-Men 97, even if this is this a one-off, by the way? Is it just one season, or are they?
No, they've extended it. Like season 3 got confirmed, I think, a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, season 3 got confirmed. I didn't even know season 2 was confirmed. So that's exciting. That's good stuff. But yeah, like you would. So anyways, fingers crossed that they kind of see what's working and stop going with like the cheap stuff. You know what I mean? Some of the Phase 4 stuff, and go with. You know what I mean? Pause for a sec. The stuff from Marvel, like one movie from Marvel Phase 4, costs so much more money to make than X-Men 97. And I feel like over the course of like 20 years, 50, even 10 years, X-Men 97 is going to do way more for Disney as a whole than the Black Widow movie. Like it's going to bring people to Disney Plus. It's going to remind people about X-Men. It's going to be like, oh, we want more X-Men movies. Whereas I'm not, no one's asking, I don't know. Anyways,
this should be a golden age of animation that we should be stepping into, right? Because we've got the best computers, we got the best tablets, we got the best minds out there doing this stuff. We should be putting more stuff like this out there, not less.
Yeah, and there's decades and decades of these stories, man. Like you know what I mean? Like just decades upon decades of these stories. Like literally, like just pull a story. That's an episode, right? And you already have, you don't have to like design the characters yourself, right? Maybe you have a different sort of like special design for the animation, maybe like kind of stylized a little bit, but like the basic components of the character, the color scheming, their basic motivations. Like I feel like, not obviously this isn't on the writers or the animators or anything like that. It's always going to be, for me, on the producers, on the production company. There is no excuse to be producing bad, especially animated content for things like anything Marvel, in my opinion. Anything Marvel, like there's no excuse for producing bad content. But maybe I'm frustrated because there should be better, more shows like 97, but there's just so much to pull from, man.
And speaking of so much to pull from, can we talk about the Jean Grey, Scott Summers thing in the first 3 episodes? Because that, I think, deserves its own. So here's the interesting thing about Cyclops, and this is, I think, another reason to why people don't like him, and I get it. He has had a very difficult time expressing his romantic feelings to people because he's so close in. Like, that's the whole part of the, like I can't see thing with him, right? Because, like, literally if he opens his eyes, he's going to hurt someone. So he's always been more of a reserved character than he has been outright. Jean Grey, of course, was his first and like most long-serving love interest. Like they got married in 1993, I want to say. Jean was away she died in like 2004, if my mind recalls correctly. She hadn't been resurrected for like. So 13 years, like, she was gone. Like, he had a completely different love interest. He dated Emma Frost for a while, and then it worked for a lot of people, which is why they ship him. It also didn't work for some people. They eventually broke up. He's back with Jean. They're married, whatever. But the thing with Scott is that he's just never been in a position to fully express his feelings out. Like, literally, it's the woman who has to pick up the relationship, which is why I also enjoy. It's sort of like he's the sub and whoever he's dating is the dom. But Jean Grey in the OG comics, like, people thought she did, because she does die at the end of Dark Phoenix Saga, as you probably know from like the adaptations and from other streamlined sources. So in the show, I think they did a really good job adapting this, but Jean gets a clone. We don't know who this clone is or where it is for someone. Her name is Madeline Pryor. She looks exactly like Jean Grey. She acts exactly like Jean Grey. She has a lot of the similar memories or whatever as Jean Grey does. So those two, they get married because, again, Scott is a rung up and doesn't know how to express himself, and, runs in. She looks like him.
To be fair, she fools everyone. Everyone was surprised, right?
Right.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but she does fool everyone.
Right. And yeah, they have a baby, and then once they found out, oh, wait, this is Jean Grey, not that Jean Grey. You know what? I will say, there is a line, or they have a conversation, right? Like, Jean and Scott have a conversation in the first episode where they're talking about we might need to move on from the X-Men. Like, we got a kid now. The kid's gonna like grow up hated and feared and all this other stuff. But the moment that she said, or that she was the one who brought it up and not Scott, I went, that's not Jean Grey. Because Jean Grey has more of a strong-minded and like, we need to continue helping people because that's like her character. That's her thing.
I see. Yeah, that would be the not to bring in like a subset of like kink or whatever, but that would be like the dom. You know what I mean? Like she is headstrong. She is like, no, we're doing this.
Right.
And not so much like the typical. I mean, not typical, but like stereotypical. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
So I went. That isn't Jean Grey. I'm being duped. They're adapting. They're adapting the whole like Jean is dead and a clone completely replaced her, and I thought that was super well done because I think it brings some very spicy drama to the X-Men. Because now it's like, well, Logan can just go like, why do you deserve Jean Scott? You might have cheated on her with this. Like what morality do you have if you been sleeping around with a duplicate? And the whole like, are you fit to lead a team if you were like, I understand that everyone was strict, but like if you're the leader, that falls on you, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's how like it is being a leader of a group or a coach or something like that. Like even if everyone gets fooled, like, it's the leaders, like how come you didn't know? But I mean, in this case, especially because he's so romantically involved, so close to Jean, or, Jean, right? Like, how do you not? I don't know. I would like to think that if my fiance was cloned, I would know. Like, man, I don't know. Like, I feel like there would be some sort of tell, right. But so I totally understand the criticism. I think the criticism is also realistic. I'm sure that's something where it's going to go.
It's an entire, like, there's like a subreddit, like you could do it. I think our X-Men also had our relationships like type of thread with this too,
that's so funny. I love that, dude. We've talked a lot about the first and second episode, but the third episode, we're kind of on that one now.
Right. Yeah.
This is with this plot line that you're talking about. And I was thinking, man, I've seen and like read about Mr. Sinister on Reddit, like through Arhood and stuff like that. And man, they make him really cool, like really scary, but also really cool. Like episode 3 is not for kids, I would say. Like that is very much like nightmare fuel. Like, obviously I'm an adult. I know that, this is the X-Men. Mostly probably everyone's going to be fine. But man, episode 3 was really cool. I loved how they did it, and God, yeah, Mr. Sinister, like because again, I'd read about him, and this episode just made him so interesting to me. Even though, like, they call him the most evil person on the planet or something like that. I think that's what Beast called him at one point.
I mean, he is a geneticist who also sort of believes in the like mutants, like the mutant evolution thing. We got to go
like
on.
a supremacy.
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
Thing. Yeah.
But also like you know what? There's an episode in SpongeBob, right, where they have the campfire. And it's Patrick, right? Like Squidward is, asking SpongeBob, like, how do we not get eaten by a sea bear? And have Patrick, like, writing notes down. There's a joke that I made to my friends a couple of years ago where it's like, oh, like, because he's super obsessed with Scott Summers and Jean Grey, right? You have two of the, like, because Scott is part of the whole, he's one of the leaders of the X-Men, headstrong. So you have that personality, and then Jean Grey is the most powerful telepath and telekinetic on the planet. So you combine those two together, you get the product of something that's more special, which is why he cloned it. But the meme that I made was like Scott and Jean are doing the thing in bed, and then I photoshopped Mr. Sinister's face on Patrick as he's writing down notes.
Jeez, that's really funny, dude.
So he is. For all accounts, he has been obsessed with the Summers Gray lineage, and for as long as he's been a character, and I completely get it. But man, you are right. Like he is terrifying in this episode.
Yeah, I wish they had more stuff like that, man. I love things like that. Like I'm a big fan of X-Files, and there are some X-Files episodes. If you have you seen X-Files?
Yeah, I have some.
Yeah, like I've seen the first like 7 seasons up until like Mulder disappears or whatever the hell happens to him. I've seen that twice or 3 times, and I've watched like the whole series itself once, even including the new stuff, which was not great. But there are some episodes of the X-Files that are legitimately scary, man, like horror film, like type stuff. Like I'll never forget when I first started watching the X-Files. I might have been in high school. And I think it's the 3rd or 4th episode. It's the guy, and this is a very famous episode. But this was the episode where I was like, I like the alien stuff, but this episode right here kind of hooked me, right? Where it's an individual episode, it kind of standalone, right? Like Mr. Sinister seems like he might not appear later on. Maybe he will, I don't know. Like this could totally be his only episode, and that would be fine because he's set up the whole plot arc of like, oh, that wasn't Jean Grey, that was someone else, and now we're questioning Scott's leadership. Like he set that up, and that totally works. But this X-Files episode that's scary, it's this guy, I forget what his name is, I forget the name of the episode, but he can like contort his body, and he has like these glowing yellow eyes, and he like climbs through like vents and stuff, and like kidnaps people, and then like,
that's creepy.
He like cocoons their body, and I think he eats them like a spider would or something. I don't know, dude. And it's like he has like a layer that he's made out of like his saliva. It's It's like
it's disgusting,
dude. And it's like, I'm telling you, it's like the 3rd or 4th episode. Like it's really creepy, like it's legitimately scary in my opinion. And I was kind of getting those vibes of Mr. Sinister, like it was just very scary, but like it seems like he's just gonna be a standalone thing, and it totally works. And his voice is kind of cool. I like his voice.
I do too. It's funny too because like he's sort of like, for pretty much all of the X-Men's history, is one of the most difficult people to like go up against because he is that powerful, he is that scary, he also is that weird. You know what? I will also say, completely unnoticed, but so Madeline Pryor, right? Who he's created as sort of like, undermine the Summers family, the X-Men, whatever. This is her regular costume in the comics. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, I looked it up. Yeah. I looked her up, and I was like, yeah, I can see why they didn't do that in the animated series. But man, dude, so Kim, she was watching it with me, and she was like, yeah, that's how you want me to talk to you, huh? Because she was like talking smack to Scott Summers, and I was like, yeah, I want you to dress like that too.
So what's up, man? Right, no, I get it. But it's also weird too because maybe they'll pull it in a different season. Scott's brother has a much more stand-in romantic relationship with her.
Oh, that's Scott. Weird.
Yeah.
That's really weird. Like, that's like twins dating twins type weird stuff. You know what I mean? Not twin, they're not twins,
Right.
they're clones.
They're
So it's even weird. And Scott was with her. Oh man.
Yeah, that's why it's super messy.
From brothers to Eskimo brothers, right on.
I'd be considering, you know what, considering that Scott is Alaskan, that would make sense.
Dude, that's hilarious.
That's what I'm saying. Like this here is the whole reason to why like people love the X-Men. Like it's a fantastic soap opera that you can just like enjoy for yourself, even if like you're like, man, all the Korean dramas are like failing me on Netflix. What can I do to watch? I'm like, go watch X-Men '97. It has like the same vibes and everything's in beats to it, and you'll fall in love with these characters too because they're super iconic. You get to talk with more people about them too. You're not just talking about an obscure drama that people might not know about, but it's like, oh, like I've heard about Cyclops, I've heard about Jean Grey. Oh man, like I feel so bad for baby Nathan, and you probably know who Nathan is, right? And who he eventually.
I don't. Maybe if you say his name, his superhero name or something, I will. But I was just like, I don't remember. Like, I don't know who this is. Or maybe
it's Cable.
Oh, Nathan is. I thought Cable was his brother.
Cable is Scott's son.
Oh.
Yeah, man. It's.
I didn't know that. Okay.
It's gonna be. This is. You know what? I can't wait to see how they do it because this is gonna be the weirdest father-son story that's ever been put on the Marvel television, and I'm all here for it.
I did not know that. That's interesting. Oh, that's so cool. That's really cool. Okay.
I also can't wait to see like what they, because Nathan, even though Maddie or Madeline, Maddie for short, she is Nathan's biological mom. He refers to Jean as his actual mom, and not Madeline.
Well, that makes sense.
Right,
I think
right.
Like I mean, at least from the origin story, I don't know how, like, if it was Madeline Pryor was also thinking she was Jean Grey when she was with Scott, or if she was duping him intentionally. Like, I don't know what the original is, but to me it would make sense that it's like, oh, like he would consider the good person who, you know what I mean, as his mom, not Madeline Pryor, because it wasn't Madeline Pryor who I would assume like raises him and stuff like that. I would assume it's Jean Grey. So
whenever season 2 drop, whenever we get to the end, I think we'll have a lot more to talk about that now that Jean is finally reintegrated to the team and the whole dynamics there. I can't wait to see how they show off. I will also say, so I know a lot of people love the Logan, Scott, Jean like love triangle. My thing is, like, we already got that in the original series, and I know that they reintroduced it here, right? Because like Wolverine is the first person that Jean sees, like when she's like fully back in a state of, you know, consciousness, until she realizes, oh, Scott exists. I can't, you know. I thought that moment was actually pretty cool, like in episode 3 where we get to see like honestly, that psychic fight scene between Jean and Madeline was super cool.
Dude, that was really cool. So that was something, oh my god, like that was really cool because it wasn't just like, oh, like I'm gonna throw big things at you and I'm gonna throw big things at you. It was like a mind game, you know? And I thought that was really cool. And I thought that like the like just the visual effects of it, man, were really cool. Like, what is it like inside someone's mind? And I thought, I don't know, maybe they have lots of animation like that or lots of panels like that in the comics, but I had never seen that before. Or if it was in the original X-Men animated series, which maybe I should go back and rewatch, or, you know, actually watch, because I've only seen those 2 episodes over and over and over again. I thought that was really cool. It wasn't like a new and unique take, I would say, because a lot of like mind games look like, you know, something similar. It's like, oh, what goes on in someone's mind if you could like physically be there. But I thought it was well executed and visually stunning. So that was a really cool fight, and not just like a, you know, obviously they do throw things at each other, but not just that. So I thought that was cool.
I thought so too. And some of the other characters that were also in the show that I guess weren't prominent as much, but we did get to see a bit of them. For all the people who love Gambit, hey, man,
I do like Gambit.
There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's hot. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
All I gotta say.
They're all hot, man.
I get it.
Yeah.
They're all hot.
Like they're all hot. You know what I mean? Which is fun, cool, right? Like, yeah, of course. Like, they'd all have relationships with each other. They're just they're a bunch of people who have been persecuted their entire lives, called freaks, bullied, all this stuff. And they finally get to a place where they're accepted for one another. And to my knowledge, they're all like adults, right? Are there any? Yeah. Is Jubilee an adult? I don't know. She seems like she could be like a teenager or something. No, she's in the club dancing. She's probably an adult, right?
I hope so.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I know, right? Like, because I assume Roberto's also an adult because he's just in the club by himself, unless he's got a fake ID, which no one ever has one of those. But yeah. Anyways. Like, it makes sense that they would have relationships with each other because, yeah, they're all hot, dude. Like, and maybe, obviously the original character design, the original comics probably weren't like, oh, yeah, we're going to make them all hot so that they get relationships with each other. They probably, made them hot because that's the first thing you're drawn to is like the design of the character. And then you're like, oh, I want to check these out. And then it's like, oh, there's the X-Men and they're all cool looking or they're all like really good looking people. And now it's just, obviously, it's just everyone expects superheroes kind of to be hot, right? Like, I don't know, who's the least attractive superhero?
I can't name you one.
Yeah, like, man, like, I don't know, dude. Like, there's probably some something, I don't know. I literally can't think. I don't know. There are some. I'm sure there are some, but I just don't know who they are.
My friend in Canada once told me, like, yeah, all superhero women are all drawn to be done.
Drawn to be done. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, I mean, especially like the original audience of comic books is largely like, teenage boys, young men, and stuff like that.
And old guys drawing and all that. Yeah.
Exactly. And old guys from different eras drawing, women how they think they should look or something like that. So like a lot, it's a product of its time, a product of like the people that did it. I think something that my partner said to me when we were watching it is, I think she said something like, oh yeah, this one's less booby or less booty or something like that. And I was like, yeah, I understand why they did that. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like it made like, it's just not the audience for it, or maybe some people are the audience for it, but it's, I don't know. It's not the point of the comic. It's not. Oh, I want to see, hot women in these tight outfits. Right. Like
that's what you watch something else for.
Exactly. There's plenty of places where you can go see that, and like there's no reason why this has to be that kind of. So, I totally get the change that they made for '97.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we specifically missed for the. For these episodes, like we got Jubilee and she's fun. We got to have like a cool conversation with her and Roberto, about life and what it means to have the X gene and how people view it differently. And yeah, I know it's I hope that it doesn't look like this one isn't gonna be a product of its time. I don't feel like, anyways. I think a lot of the elements here, again, like there are lessons to be drawn and things that we can learn from, as should they all, which is I think why this is gonna stand hopefully the test of time, and hopefully Marvel can continue to make give us like 6, 7 seasons of this, man. Like I wanna see this run up till we run out of X-Men stories to adapt, because I really miss good animated shows like this. Like I said earlier, like I've just growing up in the 2000s, like this was this type of content I would have eaten up. But I think because we've become so infatuated with the live action and trying to get the profits and the money, trying to squeeze as much, we've sort of lost this charm of what if we got a couple of people who can draw really well. What if we adapted something like that and made something cool out of this? So I'm really happy that this exists, and we still got 7 episodes to watch, so obviously the review ain't over, but
totally. And I agree with you, man. Like I think too, like something that you kind of just mentioned is that it brings in a new audience, like all the families across the United States and the world that have Disney Plus have access to X-Men 97, and there are going to be parents that are like, oh, hey, there's this new kid, Johnny, you know what I mean? Or there's this new show, Johnny, like we should watch this show on Disney. It's about the X-Men. And the parents, because it's got like, I don't want, it's not like mature themes, you know, like what would be associated with like mature themes if we're talking like rated R, rated PG-13, stuff like that. But like it's mature in the sense that if you're an adult, you're getting something from it. And if you're a kid, you might not get those messages, but it's still very enjoyable. And, you know, it's just, it appeals to a wide audience, but not in a bad way. It appeals to a wide audience because it does a lot of things so well. And I think that it's really cool that, yeah, like adults, you and I can watch this show. People older than us can watch this show, but then also so can kids, you know, like so can like a 12-year-old or whatever. And they'll be like, oh, wow, this is cool. You know, I like this character. And maybe they get freaked out because episode 3 is kind of scary. But like, I think, like we kind of mentioned earlier, this show absolutely step in the right direction. I hope this continues. Like if we get 6, 7, whatever, 8 seasons, that'd be sick. Like that, more to it, you know, like give me more X-Men 97, give me more Invincible, give me more of that, these types of shows, and I will be very happy.
No, me too, man. And yeah, maybe I think that's like a good point to sort of sign off on, just because like, there's many ways that they could go with the show. I'm very much interested to see what they have cooking up with the Summers family, because that for me, I understand that I'm a Cyclops fan and I get it, but like I want to see how this drama all turns out, because they brought Nate to an unspeakable land that, you know, we have no idea what's going to come out of that or how he's going to react if he ever gets sent back. Oh yeah, that's right. Man, Bishop was in this and he did some cool things too. Yeah, see, there's just so much in this stuff that like we could in the show that we could talk about. But man, yeah, I'm very much interested to see what Cyclops and Jean are up to in the next couple of episodes, trying to figure things out.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen it already, but I haven't. So yeah, right? You've seen it already, right?
I still haven't watched the last 3 episodes.
Oh wow, cool. Okay, cool. It's kind of like a book club, but with a TV show.
A TV show, exactly. Is there anything? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so which episodes are we covering next week? Is it gonna be like 4 through 6,
I think 4 through 7 is
okay. 4 through 7, and then the last one for this we'll do 8 through 10.
Exactly.
And 10 is the last episode, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. All right, that sounds good to me.
And yeah, that's going to be it for this episode of Two California Filipinos. We'll be back for 2 straight more weeks talking about X-Men 97 before we talk about Deadpool. I literally cannot wait to talk about I can't wait to talk about these things, man. I love the X-Men. I mean, that's why I modeled my name after them. So this is going to be cool stuff. But once again, thank you all for watching, and thank you, Drew, for joining me once again in these epic pods.
Loving it so much, man. Thanks for having me, and I can't wait for the next one. I'll see you then for sure.
Oh, heck yes. So till then, you be you, take care, and have a great rest of the day wherever you are.
Peace.